If you've been feeling lately like you have to walk on eggshells around your partner, today's episode is for you. This is a common relational issue, one that often leads couples to seek out counseling, and rightly so, because if it feels like you can't say a word, everything you say or do could lead to defensiveness or negative reaction or walking away. You're not alone in that, but it's also very problematic. It's not a sustainable place to be in a relationship. It must be resolved if you want this relationship to thrive and continue growing in a healthy way. So on today's episode, we're talking about why that walking on eggshells feeling happens in the first place, but also you'll get some actionable things that you can do starting today to begin to change this dynamic, because we both know it has to change. And hey, welcome to the podcast. If this is your first time listening, I am your host. I'm Dr. Lisa Marie Bobby. I am the founder of Growing Self Counseling and Coaching, and I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I really specialize in couples counseling and relational work. I'm also a psychologist and a board certified coach. But, today I am putting on my marriage counselor hat for you as we explore this walking on eggshells, just like everything is so fraught kind of experience, to give you some clarity and some direction around where to go from here, how to move this forward and into a better place. And so to begin, we'll just dive right in and start by talking about what I mean when I talk about walking on eggshells in a relationship, like just to unpack our terms a little bit. And so that walking on eggshells experience, the way I understand it, is that it's like a sign that one or both partners are afraid of expressing their authentic, vulnerable thoughts and feelings because they fear they won't be heard, they won't be understood, or more commonly, that they will be taken the wrong way, that whatever they say or do will have a very negative reaction from their partner, and that it's going to lead to an unproductive conflict or some kind of response that makes things worse instead of better. So they become very tentative, very careful, guarded. They're not saying what they're thinking. They're not addressing issues openly. And because of this, as I mentioned, it turns into this frozen resentment where important issues are not being addressed or not being addressed productively. And it stifles the kind of communication that every relationship needs in order to thrive. So this walking on eggshells experience doesn't come out of nowhere. Nobody starts this way. What it comes from can be a few different things. And I will just say that we'll certainly be talking about different ideas on this podcast. I want you to walk away from this with some new perspectives and actionable things to try. And when these dynamics become very entrenched in a relationship, meaning that it's frequently that way, and that even when you do try to do things differently, you always just have that same reaction or feel the same way, that can be a sign that it might be very, very important to get the professional support of a couples counselor or a good marriage counselor or even relationship coach, because we can't stay here. And one of the things that a true relationship expert will do with you first is an assessment to understand how we got here. Why is this the way it is currently? Because the answer to that question then informs what we need to do in order to correct it. So, and just a word of advice from a big sister: anytime you connect with a competent therapist or coach, they should always be starting with an assessment, meaning that they're going to ask you a bunch of questions. They're going to unpack it. They're going to dig in to understand Why is this the way that it is? Because until we have that understanding, we cannot create a meaningful or effective path out of there for you. So, if for whatever reason you start working with a therapist or a coach and they're not doing some of that in the beginning, that might be a sign that you could be with the wrong person, that you need to be with a different kind of guide through this process. So, going back, when it comes to assessing the cause of this walking on eggshells experience, there may be a few things underneath of this. One could be that there is a codependent relationship dynamic going on, meaning that one person is over functioning and the other person is under functioning. And these two positions maintain each other. For more on this subject, this is certainly beyond the scope of this podcast, but I recorded another podcast just on codependent relationships. And so if you had a little twinge of recognition when I said that, you should check that out. It's in my podcast feed, or you can go to my website, growingself.com, come into the blog and podcast area, and then the love collection. Click on healthy relationships, and you'll find that podcast about codependent relationship dynamics. Also, a reason that people can feel like they're walking on eggshells and become very tentative, very inhibited, is if they feel like they need this relationship to work at all costs, and they feel like the relationship is very, very fragile. So they cannot rock the boat. They can't do anything that would create, what feels like conflict or address open issues, because they feel like they're on such precarious ground in the relationship to begin with, that their priority is maintaining the relationship, oftentimes at their own expense. And you can see this when one person is really on thin ice with the other. Maybe the other person has been threatening divorce, or maybe there has even been like an external attachment, like they are having an affair or an emotional affair with another person, and it feels like they could walk out the door at any moment. People on the other side of that can become very, very careful and inhibited because they are just sort of living in fear that the other person will drop the gauntlet and walk out the door if they're too much. So that can be a really challenging dynamic to resolve. And if you are going through something like that, please do seek out professional support to help you find your way through that one. Another reason that walking on eggshells experience can happen, that I think is much more common, is that when people have a fear of conflict, that may be due to having had bad experiences in this relationship where you tried to bring up things and it turned into what felt like a really toxic or unproductive argument as opposed to a productive conversation. Or even if you have experienced that happening in past relationships. Even sometimes if you grew up in a home where there was a lot of explosive, unproductive arguing and conflict, as opposed to constructive conflict, what this can lead to is this just general fear of conflict. And and what does conflict mean? It could mean any kind of disagreement, difference of opinion. If I want something or need something that you might not want or agree with. And if you have learned that it's not safe to talk about things in an open way because of previous negative experiences of it not going well, it can make you feel quite guarded, quite inhibited, protective, like you can't say how you're feeling. And sometimes that can be for really legitimate reasons in your current relationship. But sometimes you may have those fears because of earlier experiences that you're bringing into this relationship with you that may or may not be grounded in reality. And not to, delegitimize what your experience is or what you've lived through. But many times I've worked with people as a marriage counselor who have a lot of narratives and stories around what will happen if I bring something up, that actually when they do talk about how they're feeling or the things that they would like to have be different, in a supportive and constructive way. They're often quite surprised, pleasantly surprised to see just how well it goes and just how responsive their partner is. So that's also something to think about. But I think most importantly, and when, relationships have deteriorated to the point where people are rightfully anticipating highly negative reactions from the other person that make them feel like they can't say things or have to be extremely careful, is when there is this lack of emotional safety in the relationship. People are not understanding or prioritizing creating emotionally safe spaces for each other in intentional ways. So there's lashing out or a lot of reactivity or criticism or even contempt or punishing kinds of behaviors. And so not certainly going into like abuse territory that is way beyond the scope of this podcast. But we're talking about like, giving somebody the silent treatment or the cold shoulder or being passive aggressive like that kind of punishing. That can happen in relationships where people don't have a high priority around emotional safety and also where they don't know how to handle their feelings of anger or frustration or annoyance or productively work through conflicts just because they haven't had the opportunity to learn how to do that before. If you've listened to this podcast before, you've heard me say time and time again that nobody teaches us how to have healthy relationships. Some of us are privileged enough to be born into families with parents or caregivers who are highly emotionally intelligent and who are able to model constructive conflict and how to work through problems together, how to have disagreements and then arrive at a shared vision for how to handle it differently and in an emotionally healthy and safe way. Most of us didn't, right? And so that is why when we run into these rough patches in our relationships as adults, it's so critical to use this as an opportunity to learn how to do relationships differently, And so that's why people get into couples counseling or relationship coaching is because they've said, I don't know how to do this. And what I'm trying to do right now isn't working very well. So I think there's a different way. And I'm open to learning how to do that. Let's do it together. So that's a very positive and productive way of looking at it. And I think that's also why, people who have the best and the strongest relationships are the ones who get into couples work as soon as possible. They don't wait until it deteriorates past the point of no return out of some, core beliefs that like, oh, it's not bad enough for couples counseling. No, this is how people learn. So I just wanted to mention that because you'll hear me talking about how important and helpful it is to get effective support for your relationship if this is going on. But just if you have any core beliefs around what it means to get couples counseling or the kinds of people who get couples counseling, I just want to present you with a new idea is that the strongest couples are the ones who take this seriously and go through the trouble of learning how to have a better relationship. So coming back to this idea of walking on eggshells and why it happens, we just explored a few different reasons why this dynamic can come into being in the first place. But those are important to understand because when we seek to resolve this on a deep level, we need to address those underlying core dynamics in order to make it different on a long-term enduring basis. But on the surface level, anytime that walking on eggshells experience is happening, it means that we're not expressing our truth to the people we care about. And when we do that, we're doing it because of, the short-term desire to protect the relationship from whatever we fear might happen, whatever that breaking eggshell is, right? But the reality is that whenever we are hiding and inhibited and shut down, we can't be close to other people. It creates relational stability in the short term, but it also really damages emotional intimacy. When we don't give our partners a chance to understand how we're feeling and respond to us in hopefully a way that would nurture trust and help our relationships grow, the relationship will wither. So if it feels like you can't do that with your partner because they'll, feel criticized or get defensive or get mad at you or whatever it is, that is a sign that you should really get some help from a good couples counselor, because even if your intentions are good, if your partner has a very strong negative narrative about you or whatever you're going to say, you won't be able to break through that on your own. You need somebody to come in there with you and help change the system. That's what we marriage counselors do. So, some ways, though, aside from good couples counseling, that you can begin changing that dynamic, particularly if it's not quite as extreme, so that you can stop walking on eggshells and start showing up more authentically again for your own benefit and for the benefit of your relationship, is to first of all decide for yourself that you are going to prioritize emotional safety. Because without emotional safety, people feel like they need to be really cautious in their communication in order to avoid conflict or hurt feelings. But again, this pattern can leave both of you feeling really alone and misunderstood. So I recorded a whole podcast on the subject of emotional safety in relationships. I do hope you check that out. But, the short version is that instead of fixating on the trivial things and whatever the problem is, first, prioritize that emotional connection. So, for example, use something called a soft startup. Be very gentle. Hey, I have something that I wanted to talk with you about, but is now a good time? Or I feel like this could potentially be a difficult conversation, and I really want it to go well. Um, Also, to be able to say out loud things like, I really want to be able to talk about my feelings with you authentically and honestly, but sometimes I feel like I can't because I'm worried about how you'll react. And I hope that we could have a conversation about, things that are really important to me without it turning into an argument, because I love you so much. And I know it's important for us to be talking about these things, but I really want it to go productively. So even just starting with your good intentions and being open and vulnerable with how you feel, you are beginning to create a framework and an environment of emotional safety that will support both of you in the conversation to come. Also, another strategy is really deciding on how you are going to react in these moments. So, if you're listening to this and you are the partner who frequently feels criticized or blamed or nagged and, has that like, reaction when your partner brings something up, it's really important for you to recognize your reactions and understand where they're coming from, but also how they are impacting your partner. And if your partner feels like they're drifting further and further away from you, that could be why. Additionally, withdrawing physically or emotionally. So taking a step back so you're not, exploding at your partner, but it's kind of a different type of negative consequence. This can be understandable, and I think frequently seen response, but it also deepens the emotional divide, and it leads to this feeling that your partner can't say anything to you because of the way that you're going to react, even if the response is to freeze or shut down. Furthermore, if you are the partner who feels that, I'm responsible for how this goes, and so you're being extremely careful trying to manage your partner's emotional reactions, one way to decide how to react is that you can decide to be honest and emotionally mature and certainly loving, but also authentic, and decide that, you don't need to be controlled by your fears of how your partner is going to react to you. And I think that mindset comes from this idea of it's not my job to manage your emotions. So I want to have an adult conversation with you about something that's really important. And I sure hope that you can stay in the ring with me while we do this. But it requires you staying very calm, compassionate, loving, soft, right? Vulnerable while you're talking about it. Your ability to stay calm can help your partner stay calm in what could otherwise be a tense situation. Of course, again, these things are much easier to talk about than they actually are to do. Many couples require a journey through relationship coaching, couples therapy, marriage counseling in order to be able to do these things. And so I don't want to talk about these and minimize how difficult they can be to do, particularly if you haven't learned the skills and strategies that will allow you to do it yet, because I don't want you to feel badly about yourself or your relationship if this is a growth area that is still ahead of you, right? It doesn't mean that you're in the worst relationship in the world because you guys can't do this. Maybe it just means that you haven't had the chance to learn how to do it together yet. Word of advice, if you do decide to get into some kind of relational work, make sure you work with a licensed marriage and family therapist who has specialized education, training, experience in evidence-based systemic approaches to relational work that other therapists do not have. A relationship expert, an MFT, marriage and family therapist, will be able to help you understand the system and how you two are impacting each other and will help you improve your relationship. Whereas a traditionally trained therapist, like a licensed psychologist, I am also a licensed psychologist, and I will tell you through that educational experience, I did not learn how to do the things that I'm telling you about today. You will have a different experience if you get involved with the wrong kind of therapist at this crucial make or break moment for your relationship. It's likely that one of you will be pathologized as being the person with the problem because therapists who are trained in clinical mental health, that is what they know how to do, is the diagnosis and treatment of mental health conditions, not systemic marriage and family therapy. So just a word to the wise here. Be very careful about who you seek help from. This is such an important thing for me. I put together a how-to guide actually on how to find a good marriage counselor to help you understand the credentials, differences in education and training, also different types of marriage counseling, because those aren't all the same either. And so that's also available for you on my website, growingself.com. Come over to the free resources page and you can read all through that, so that you can make informed decisions about who you work with to avoid potential problems that can arise if you connect with the wrong kind of professional. So with that in mind, when you focus on emotional safety and in managing your own reactions, you can begin to see these walking on eggshells moments a little bit differently. One really helpful new mindset for somebody who does tend to be reactive when things come up is to shift into a new core belief, which is understanding that your partner is attempting to reach you emotionally. Maybe it doesn't feel great how they're doing it right now, and that might be a conversation worth having so that your partner understands when they do have something important to bring up with you, the way that they could go about that would feel better for you and would help you stay in the emotional ring with them. However, in order to even say that, you'll first need to get control of your reactions in order to take the first step in breaking this cycle. But that may be something extremely important to address. Additionally, for both people in this dynamic, making it a point to show up in a vulnerable way is critically important. Anytime there's a sensitive topic that needs to be addressed, just remember when you come into that with a defensiveness or with an edge, it's only going to lead to arguments. A better way that can lead to better outcomes is to access vulnerability, which means finding and then expressing the tender feelings that are beneath the surface of your frustrations. This takes a little bit of time to figure out, to say, what am I actually angry about? Oh, yes, my feelings are hurt. But if you can say that, it's going to go a lot better than coming at it from, let me tell you about how bad I am, right? Being open about these emotional needs helps your partner hear you more easily and will make it emotionally safer and will make it less likely that they're going to have a negative reaction to you. So, being vulnerable is a relationship saving skill that both of you can work on together. But that when you do that, it can really help with this walking on eggshells dynamic. And just, to acknowledge the fact that vulnerability is always scary, right? Particularly in the context of a relationship that hasn't always felt emotionally safe, I should say. But when you are brave and courageous and sharing what's real, the part that can be at risk of going unsaid, it invites your partner to come towards you rather than having a reason to push you away or react badly. And if you are being authentic and vulnerable and your partner still isn't having any compassion, that is a very major sign that you need help from a marriage and family therapist. So don't stop, keep going, but get the help that you need. And then lastly, I'll just say that it's really important in these situations to own your truth because authentic and satisfying relationships are always based on telling the truth with love, right? And if you feel like you can't tell your partner the truth about how you're feeling, what is the basis of the relationship, something needs to change. And this may mean that you need to build up your own ability to be vulnerable in relationships or find ways of articulating your feelings differently, which can also really be something that a good couples counselor can help you with, is figuring out how you are feeling, what it is that you need, and then how to speak your truth in a way that your partner can hear. And that's when you can begin to have trust building experiences with each other that will repair the fabric of your relationship and make it feel much less fraught and like powder keggy. So when you can do these, you start to be able to see the old dynamic through a different lens. Because conflict is not typically about the surface issue. It's not about the thing or the problem that's being discussed. It's often about a deeper need for connection or how emotionally safe or cared for people feel with each other. So when you are considering the emotions underneath, like what could be contributing to this powder keg dynamic? Is it possible that one or both of us are experiencing things like loneliness, shame, rejection? That's when you can begin to see things differently and handle things differently in response. I will share one fantastic resource. A book for couples is by Sue Johnson. She is the thought leader around a style of evidence-based couples therapy. It's called Emotionally Focused Couples Therapy, Dr. Sue Johnson. And she has done so much to train marriage and family therapists like myself in her approach. And I utilize her ideas when I work with couples frequently. But she's also written a great book for lay people called Hold Me Tight. It's just a wonderful read that can help you get a little bit more clarity into what might be going underneath the surface in these kinds of relationship dynamics. So I just wanted to share that with you. So, in closing, healing a relationship when it feels so mercurial, it takes effort, it takes communication, I think it takes courage, but most of all, it takes a real willingness to break free from these destructive patterns by doing something differently, starting with yourself. And if you have been trying and doing everything that you know how to do and are still feeling stuck, seek the guidance of a good, licensed marriage and family therapist to provide you with the support that you need to move forward, because this is a difficult dynamic and it really does need to change. And I will just say, just because you don't know how to fix it or resolve it with what you've been trying so far doesn't mean that it's not fixable. That's why people come into couples counseling and relationship coaching, is to get the kind of guidance that they need to learn how to understand each other differently and how to do things differently. So I have so many more resources for you on this subject. You can come visit me at my website, growingself.com. If you'd like, you can take a relationship quiz that I built for you. It's called How Healthy is Your Relationship? You can come to the free resources section of my website to find it. But you can take this assessment, answer some questions, and it'll come back with a report that'll take a look at things like some of the stuff we've been talking about today: communication, reactivity, emotional safety. You can take it, your partner take it, and that in itself could be a great starting point to open up a conversation about changing the way that you relate to each other. Also, if you come into the blog and podcast area of my website and enter into the Love collection, you'll find so much more on healthy communication, emotional and sexual intimacy. I have just all these different content collections built for you. And in each, you'll find a curated podcast playlist with more on these topics and informational articles that I've written or other clinicians on my team at Growing Self have written, because, we're really all here for you. So take advantage of it. It's there. And of course, if you would like to talk about this with a licensed marriage and family therapist who has been to this rodeo before and knows how to help both of you get clarity into what's going on both sides of this equation, and really what the path of growth and healing needs to be specific to your circumstances, you're invited. Just come to growingself.com, schedule a free consultation meeting, and we'll talk about it and develop a plan to help you guys get unstuck and back into enjoying each other again, so that you can feel free and authentic and open and connected, because that's what it's all about. I will be back in touch with you next week with another episode of the podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll talk to you soon.